Okay, so welcome everyone. Just going to move this over a little bit. This week's Parsha is Parsha Lecha. And so what I'd like to do is read the first three psukim, the first three verses of the Parsha, and then come back to the Rashi and other commentary on it. There's a Hayom Yom from last week, maybe you saw it, which basically says that the first Parsha of the year, which is Bereshis, begins on a happy note, creation of the world, creation of Adam and Chava, but ends on a sad note. The world began to turn away from Hashem. So therefore, the first Parsha begins happily and then concludes unhappily. The second Parsha, Noach, begins unhappily, the discussion of the people of the generation of the flood, but it ends happily because at the end of the Parsha, we read about the birth of Avraham. And Lech Lecha is the first Parsha that is happy and joyous through and through, from beginning to end. The first verse talks about Avraham, and it continues the entire Parsha speaking of Avraham and Sarah, or as they are initially, Avram and Sarai, and their stories, their journeys, their tests. So in the Pirkei Avos, we say Avram was tested 10 times, right? Avram Nisa was 10 times to prove his closeness and how beloved God was to him and how beloved he was to God. There's this agreement that Avram was tested 10 times. There is not necessarily consensus of what those 10 tests were. So there are some which everyone agreed to was a test. Like the test of the Akedah. Everyone agrees that was a test, the test of binding of Isaac. I think everyone agrees that one of the tests was sending away Yishmael, which he had to do in next week's Torah portion. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, everyone agrees that verse number 1 of this week's Parsha was one of the 10 tests. What is that verse? Vayomer Hashem al Avram, God says to Avram, Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeis avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. Go forth from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's home, to the land which I will show you. Verse number 2. So Avram is asked to leave his birthplace, Ur Kasdim. Till today, there's a city in Iraq named Ur, and I think they maintain the tradition that's the city that Avram was in. But he's asked by God to leave and go to the land which I will show you. The and I will then make you into a great nation. Va'avarechecha, and I will bless you. Ve'agad shemecha, and I will make your name great. Ve'heyeh bracha, and you will be a blessing. Verse number 3. Va'avarcha mevarachecha. Those who bless you will be blessed. Umekalelcha a'or, those who curse you will be cursed. V'nivruchu v'cha kol mishpachos ha'adam, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through you and through your offspring. This, by the way, is brought down in the Gemara that the reason we begin the Amida, we start the Amida with the words Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avosenu.
Open my mouth to say your praise.
What's that? What's that, Dan? Oh. All right. No problem. Good to see you. Actually, it's very appropriate that we're talking about traveling, and you are literally bringing that idea into reality as we speak, as you travel from one place to another. So thank you for that, for being a living, shining example. But either way, continuing. So Abraham says, he says, go from your land, your birthplace. Oh, so in the Amida, we begin with Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, and Elokei Yaakov, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. All right, so we mentioned the 3 forefathers. But then at the end of the first blessing, how do we conclude? Baruch atah Hashem, Magen Avraham. Why we don't say Magen Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov? We don't repeat the 3. It just comes back to the shield of Abraham. Why just the shield of Abraham? Why not the shield of all 3? If we began the blessing by mentioning all 3, why not conclude the blessing with all 3? And the Talmud draws from this verse because he says we find these verses associated with Abraham more so than anyone else. The idea of vehayeh bracha, and you shall be a blessing. So God was saying that more so even than your descendants, your children, the other forefathers, you shall be a source of blessing. And that's why we refer back to Abraham at the end of the blessing and not back to all three. Anyway, this is the, now what's so remarkable about these verses? These verses are extremely historic. Why? Not so much because of what is said, although that too, but if you think about it, these verses are the first communication between God and the Jewish people ever, right? Who was the first Jew? The first Jew is Avram. Avram is the first Jew, Avram and Sarah. When does God speak to Avram the first time? Right here, he's 75 years old. Arguably, you can say, and this, I don't want to say this with certainty, it's also not a very black and white issue, but we refer to Avram and Sarah as the first Jews. When did they become Jewish? When did Avram and Sarah become Jewish? Did they ever convert? Is there ever a time in which God tells them, you are now Jewish? Not really. And the truth is that even their status as Jews is different than the status of Jews after the giving of Torah. So when did Avram and Sarah become Jewish? I think it could be said that right here, it's at this moment when God gives him a message that you should go to the land of Israel, and I will make you into a nation, and your nation, your descendants will be a very unique nation, which is referring to the Jewish descendants of Abraham. So this moment in time is where God creates, so to say, the first Jew. Abraham and Sarah suddenly have this new, unique Jewish mission. He and Sarah were both righteous until that point. We have other righteous people. You have Noah who was righteous. You have Chanoch who was righteous. You have others who are righteous, Shais. But here, it can be said, this is the beginning of the Jewish people is right here. And it's with these words. And if that's the case, then we got to think about if these were the first words ever communicated between God and the Jewish people, they must contain something very profound. If you're going to start an organization, a movement, a nation, then you probably would begin with something very profound. And it does seem to be a rather technical starting point. The starting point is not, I am God, or you are my beloved people, you are my beloved servant, or anything of those sorts. This is rather technical. I need you to leave and go to the land which I'm going to show you. But upon closer reflection, it's not technical at all. And really, there is a great depth to this verse, these three verses, which maybe encapsulates one of the most essential parts of Yiddishkeit. And that is, what does it mean to be a Jew? And the Pasuk tells us, God says to Avram, Lech Lecha, me'artzecha, leave your land, your birthplace, your father's home, to the land where I will show you. So there's one simple question is, if God wanted to travel to Israel, why do that? Say, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, God said to Avram, Lech, go, el ha'aretz asher areka, go to the land where I will show you. If I need you to go somewhere, I mean, we could put this by Dan. Dan is right now driving a truck, and he's commuting things from one place to another. I assume that's right. See, on the road. So now I'm going to assume that there is a dispatcher which directs you of where you need to go to bring the produce. So I'm going to suggest, you correct me if I'm wrong, dispatcher doesn't tell you where you have to leave from, just tells you where you got to go. We need you to bring a bunch of seltzer, around the dock seltzer. I know you've carried that because we got the blessings of leftovers. And that is that we need you to carry some around the dock seltzer from New York. We need you to bring it to Michigan or to Ohio. Where you're going from is irrelevant. The point is where you need to go. And yet, for some reason, the verse over here chooses to emphasize 3 times the place where you're going from. And to add to this question, then the verse doesn't even conclude of where exactly you're going. All it focuses on where you're coming from. And then when it talks about where you're going to, all it says is Asher Areka, the land I will show you. It's bizarre. It's a very bizarre way to tell someone to travel. Can you imagine? Again, if you're driving something, you have to commute something, transfer, you're told just get into the truck and bring stuff. Where to? I don't know. I'll let you know. So it's a rather strange way to Waze or to Google Maps. And he didn't even provide him Waze or Google Maps. So it's just straight up, I'll let you know. So the Rabbi points out that there's something very profound over here. And that is that God is telling Avram, the first extra word is the word Lecha. Lech, Lecha. The word Lecha is unnecessary. Lech means go. Lecha means to you. And so therefore, the first point that is being shared by God to Avram, to the first Jew, and the first Jewish message in history is that in order to reach Lecha, do you want to know how to get to the true identity of yourself? You want to know how to get to you? You have to first begin with Lech. It requires going. It requires traveling. It requires being on a journey. Judaism means being on a journey. If you're not on a journey, then you're not doing Judaism right. And you can have two Jews sitting side by side. Both are perhaps at the same level of observance, so both are observing the Torah the same way, keeping Shabbos, keeping kosher. But they're in different worlds because one of them has settled into their way of life and kind of said, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to be. And, I'm just living my life one day at a time, continuing in the pattern which I've already embraced. And the second person sitting next to them may be doing the same thing, but in their mind, they're always challenging themselves. What is my next? Where am I going to? What's my journey now? How do I become a little bit better in some area of my life? That's the first point. Lech, you have to go. But then God says furthermore, instead of just giving us that point, God says, there are several parts of your life which may hold you back from moving forward. Several parts of who you are which may hold you back. And they are, specifically, there's three elements or excuses which may hold me back from pursuing that which I know I should be. One is my natural inclination. I am overwhelmed with my Yetzer Hara, my animalistic instincts, my cravings, all those, that which I desire, that which I am blinded by all the things that I want, that my animal soul wants. That's one thing which holds me back from pursuing or doing that which I should be doing. The second excuse or thing which holds us back is my social society, my social surroundings. That it's uncomfortable for me to do something right now when those around me will look at me strange, and others will see me as extreme. So I don't want to do something which will jeopardize my social setting. And the final thing which may hold me back is I feel like my genetics. I was raised in a certain home, and my family taught me to do something a certain way. And it's very hard to separate from that which I was raised doing. And to address all these three excuses, God says to Avram, you want to know how to Lech Lecha, you want to know how to go and thereby reach yourself. You want to find who you are. It's one of the big questions we all have in life. We're looking for clarity of who we are. So God says, you're going to have to go, you're going to have to travel, you're going to have to journey to find who you are. It doesn't necessarily mean physical journey. It means journeying in your approach to life. And part of that journey means leaving behind the three excuses which we gave. The first is Artzacha, your land. Chassidus often says that the word Artzacha is closely related to the word Ratzon. Ratzon, which means desire. So Eretz, which means land, and Ratzon share the same root. And God says you're going to have to be able to leave some of those desires behind in order to continue on this journey as a Jew. The second idea is Moladetecha, which means your birthplace. That means the environment you grew up in, the city you grew up in, even though it seems to be redundant. Your land and your birthplace, the same thing. No, over here, birthplace means the surroundings that you had in life, the surroundings and the social settings, and that the comfort zone that you grew up in. You may have to leave that behind in order to find yourself. Now, I want to emphasize it doesn't mean that you have to leave everything behind. But if you find, because there's many good elements about our desires, many good elements about our upbringing, many good elements about our family life. But in order to truly find ourselves, we have to be ready to leave some of those negative elements behind. We can't be trapped. If I do find myself stuck because of any one of these three, I have to know that God gives me the ability, as difficult as it is, to travel, to move beyond them to find myself. So Molad Tetecha represents your birthplace, your social surroundings. And Beis Avicha, your father's home, is, again, the most obviously is the influences of my family, my childhood. Now, I would assume that most of those influences are good. Again, the Torah gives us a great obligation to respect and honor where we come from and to have gratitude where we come from. But nonetheless, a person can have that level of respect, reverence, and gratitude, and nonetheless recognize that maybe there's some elements of where I came from where I can do better. And that's where the third idea of Beis Avicha, your parents' home, teaches us. So these are the three things that God says you have to travel from. And finally, and then he says, Allah Arts, you wonder where you're going to? I'm not even telling you exactly where you're going to. Just follow, just go on this journey. The destination doesn't matter that much. It's not about, now, sometimes the only way to move forward is by setting goals, and goals are destinations. That's fine. So therefore, I have to set a goal for myself. I need to conclude this section of Talmud, or I need to give this amount of charity, or I need to learn how to read Hebrew and pray. All these are goals, which are good, but they're only good because they force us to move. Goals are really the destination we're going to is actually not that significant. And that's why God doesn't tell them where you're going. He just says, go to the land. I'll show you. Don't worry, you go. Make sure that the attitude and the approach you have to life is that you're looking to grow, and you're looking to move, you're looking to journey. And then the time will come, I'll show you exactly where you're supposed to end up. I'll show you where you need to land, but I'm not going to tell you that now. And that's that's why upon review, this verse, which seems to be technical at first, seems to just be of God telling I need you to move, is actually extremely profound and very appropriate to be the first communication between God and the Jewish people, because it really conveys an essential point of what Judaism is about. And this is what the first verse, the first pasuk comes to teach us. And then God promises, if you do so, verses number 2 and number 3, then you will be blessed. And not only you will be blessed, but the greatest blessing to hear is that others will be blessed through you. It's a very beautiful blessing. It's that not just is God promising that you will have what you need and bless, but to know that the nations of the world are blessed through you. That is a very beautiful bracha. And we see it from time to time. You see it sometimes if I can be not just a source of blessing to myself, but if people see me, or people feel that when they're around me, they are blessed. They feel that I am somehow, I become a window which allows the light of Hashem to filter through me to others, then that is a true fulfillment of the divine task given to each and every one of us. All right, that I'm going to wrap it up, maybe a few minutes sooner than usual. Hope you forgive me for that. And I look forward, hopefully in better health, next Thursday to discussing the Torah portion of Vayera.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be
Thanks, Rabbi. Feel better.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.